So somebody wrote a comment. Greetings, brothers and sisters. Somebody wrote a comment about reincarnation versus heaven. And I addressed the comment here in the long audio. I think it's a really good description about the evidence supporting reincarnation. So I want to make it into a video on this channel here. And so here it is. Okay, greetings, brothers and sisters. Got a lot of things to get to. I don't know what those things are, but they're there. I had some comments, 3 comments I want to get to. And the first one is this. I enjoy listening to you, Paul, but to declare no heaven, but declare reincarnation, they both take faith, sir, except you're biased against the faith for heaven. Why not see both and believe the same? And since there's no proof otherwise, really enjoying your psychological breakdown and control of language. Take care. Physiological breakdown and control of language. Take care. Well, because one's true and one isn't. Like I speak the truth here. And so if you understand the difference between, like you're saying they're both something that you can't know, which is true. 100% agree with that. Like the things that you can experience without, you really can't experience it until you die. Like there's lots of things like that. But you can experience it to some extent. You can experience heaven on earth. The kingdom of heaven is within. But the kingdom of heaven as described by Jesus, the kingdom of heaven is within, is not the bullshit heaven you're given by your religion. Okay, so let's just examine the facts here and how you can experience both past and future lives, and experience the heaven part, like as a real thing and not the fake bullshit heaven that they're giving you in Christianity, the religion. So Christianity, there's huge holes that they don't address. So there's nothing in Christianity that tells you where you came from before. Where were you before? So I just asked the AI thing, which has been great, right? Very, yay. Good job. Gemini, as it's called. Christianity, I asked, what does Christianity say about where your soul came before you were born? Christianity and mainstream denominations generally teaches that the soul does not have a pre-existence before birth, in the way some other religions' philosophies might suggest, like reincarnation or the idea of the soul waiting to be embodied. Here's a breakdown of the Christian understanding. Creation by God, the dominant view is that God creates each individual soul at the point during the process of conception of birth. There isn't a single universal agreed upon moment, but the soul is understood to be a direct creation of God. So this is a bullshit thing, right? So think about that, right? Some theological traditions believe that the soul is created at the moment of conception, coinciding with the creation of the physical body. Why would that be the case? That's silly. Why would the soul be created with the body? They need that to be the case because they bullshit you. They're lying to you, the powers that be. Not Jesus isn't lying to you. Jesus believed in reincarnation. Okay, so there's excerpts of the Bible was taken out where Jesus said who he was in past lives. And there's the Nag Samadhi text. The Nag Samadhi text, what's the other term for them? The Gnostic Gospels that were supposed to be found out in the desert, which were written by Mary Magdalene. Now, I don't know if those things are true, but I don't know if the Bible, all this stuff is in question of how legitimate any of it is, right? But, I believe that it is, some of this stuff, right? In the Nag Samadhi text, the Nag, whatever, I don't know exactly how to pronounce it. But in the, Sahaj Marg tradition, Babaji intercommune with all these various souls. Buddha, Muhammad, Jesus, and lots of others. Swami Vivekananda, Krishna, all these various souls. And he had conversations, and he had some Christians that were there who had questions, people who used to be Christian, and they were like, I think it was Danish people from Denmark. And they recorded Babaji having this conversation with Jesus. And Jesus said that he and Mary Magdalene were together. And Babaji didn't understand because Babaji wasn't like aware of the Christian, the mainstream story. And he was like, he said Mary, and the people said Mother Mary, and then Jesus was talking about Mary, and then he said, and he asked Jesus, and Jesus said, no, the other one, the other Mary. And so, and Babaji, was like, just just being the sort of go-between. Like he wasn't well versed in, he didn't read the Bible or any of these other texts. He had some training, I'm sure, for the Mahabharata, but mostly it was just him intercommuning with God. Like all of his knowledge, he didn't read books and philosophical books and spiritual books. He realized when he was a young person that he wanted to have original thought. He didn't want other people's thoughts in books and things like that to interfere with his connection to God, which he was getting information directly from God. And he thought that was the most accurate information because it is, right? And so he was talking to these, when he had a question, he would ask, he'd go to any of these higher developed souls and he would intercommune, right? Like having that ability, then you don't need the internet. You had the Ethernet, right? And so Jesus was banging Mary Magdalene. Is basically, in terms of the Sahaj Marg tradition. I don't expect this person, any Christian, to believe that, but that's, what I understand to be the case. And, he had a very intimate relationship with her. And so in terms of the disciples, she would be one of them, right? And this is the whole thing from Dan Brown's book, and these, people have talked about that. And there'd be, maybe there's children. Maybe Jesus had children, this kind of thing, right? And so, which wouldn't necessarily mean they were good or whatever, because, they probably wouldn't, because, Babaji's 5 kids were a disaster. Babaji had horrible children, right? So it doesn't mean that, it's not like spirituality is passes down from generation to generation. But in these texts, the Gnostic Gospels, it's clear Jesus believed in reincarnation. And so if you don't believe that, you'd have to believe that, the idea of the soul came from ancient India. They want to make Judaism older than Hinduism. Like I looked at what mainstream media had out there, and this was, Christian-dominated mainstream media, of the timeline of the religions. And they had it that Judaism began before Hinduism, right, from Sanatana Dharma, which is its actual name. And so that's bullshit because Hinduism has been around for like 200,000 years. Like it's got a long history, and there's the Vedas and all these things. And so Krishna came before Jesus. 5,000 years ago, he came before the Jewish religion started. And before him was Rama, and they were both incarnations of Vishnu, the god of the cosmic functionary of preservation. And somewhere in that period of time, some ancient time, somebody realized that we have a soul. Some saint had, connection with God, and this knowledge of soul consciousness came in, and it came in through India. And so if you understand that, that's the original idea of the soul. And so every religion that believes in a soul, which is basically all of them, it started there. And the soul was understood to have created the body. And so this is something that the Christians, have taken from the Jewish tradition, has taken from ancient India, the idea of a soul. And so you have to go back to the source. And the original name of the soul was Atman in Sanskrit, which was the original language, which is a language that is, kind of all but lost in India. Like only there's just a handful of people that can really speak it and read it and understand it. I mean, not a handful, but, it's not a lot of people. But it was the original spiritual language where the words, Atman, like it just has a great sound. You can always feel your soul. Like if you thought about Atman, as a sort of a, as a meditation or like a mantra, it would, you can feel your soul when it's, you hear the word. Like it's the original, it's the real word for soul. Soul is a nice word. Like there's words that just sound better phonetically, and they have a nice vibration to them. So soul is a great, it's not like it's a bad word, but Atman is a better word. It's more the correct word, Atman. But if you understand this, like it's a silly fucking idea. Like just think about this. why would your soul be created when your body's created, right? Like, it's silly. Like, it's a fucking silly idea. Why would your soul and your body have to be created at the exact same time? The only reason is because they don't want to tell you where you came from before. They don't. They've made some bullshit thing up, and these are the, this is to do with the Council of Nicaea and these other times where fucking assholes, like, just like Dodgy's doing to Sahaj Marg right now. Like, I'm watching this happen in real time, where somebody is taking the teachings and rearranging them for their own material benefit, taking pure teachings, taking a pure system. And so when Jesus was around, there was reincarnation. He believed it, his disciples believed it, and he talked about it. Like, he talked about what his past lives were, and he had past lives with people. And so the first piece to this is you had to come from somewhere, and your soul exists internally. Your soul wasn't created when your body's created. It's fucking silly. Again, this is the scam. So the way that Christianity works is they have to sell to you they have a monopoly on God and a monopoly on heaven. And the only way they can sell that is to make sure you don't believe in reincarnation, because if you believed in that, then there wouldn't be this idea that you have a choice. You have there are two options. You either go to hell or you go to heaven. Babaji, the second master system, wrote about how religions use fear and temptation. Fear of something bad like hell, and temptation of something that is good like heaven, right? Like, you're either going to get one of these two things. I don't know about purgatory. That's like, whatever the fuck that is, right? But the reason they can control you as Christians is a cult. And this is, again, this person said that I have bias against heaven, which is silly because I grew up as a Catholic, and I don't have any problems with my Catholic upbringing. I didn't have any, pedo priest. The nuns that used to come over to our house to do prayer meetings were really nice, sweet women. I went to a Catholic school for 1 year, and the nuns were great. They didn't crack my knuckles. They were nice. I had respect for the nuns. I mean, like, I thought they were, they were nuns, and they were older, women. They were nuns, but they weren't like mean or brutal or whatever they were, right? I thought they were, sincere in their spirituality. They just were, I thought they were good people. As a kid, I was in 8th grade, and my mom started to have these prayer meetings when I was in 8th grade, and then I started smoking pot in high school. But I went to some of these things with my mom, these prayer things. And, I was like into the whole thing. I was into being a Catholic. I had no issues with my Catholicism. Like, I didn't have anything that I felt like, oh man, that sucked, or I was wronged by the religion. But like Swami Vivekananda said, a religion's a great thing to be born into, but a horrible thing to die in. And I did what Jesus did. And many of us do this. Many people do this. It's probably, I would think, maybe in the millions, it's still a small fragment of the population, that you have a spiritual relationship where you start having a relationship with the divinity within you. And that's what Jesus did. And that's what Christianity should teach you to do. But they don't want you to do that because they can't control you then, right? They don't want you to have direct contact with God. They want to be the middleman between you and God. So they came up with this bullshit story to say when you die, you're either going to heaven or hell, and we're the gatekeepers between those two things. We're the ones that are going to let you into heaven. If you don't go to heaven, you're going to hell. And so if it's a one-off, well, there can't be a future life or a past life. So they made up this bullshit thing that your soul's created when your body's created. Like, your body's a physical thing. Your soul creates your body. Your soul manifests your body. Your soul picks your, like all the characteristics and things of the family and your mom. Your soul hangs around your mom. And you can, I've experienced this, the souls that were there. And women, mothers can experience, they can feel the soul around them. So this is confirmation that the soul's there. I'm talking about before conception. Because the soul will hang out around the mom until there's, a suitable sperm donor. The father is in there, right? But the soul's with the mom, and they already have a relationship, and women have experienced this. And so that's documentation of bullshit on this Christian belief that the soul's created when the body's created. And again, it's a bullshit story because they can't tell you what Jesus actually believed, which was reincarnation, because they lived, Jesus went to India and they were close to this area. Like they're not that far off. And this was the knowledge back then of the soul. People who understood that there was a soul understood that you had a past existence. And so you came from somewhere. It's stupid. That's a stupid fucking idea. Your soul and your body are created because your body is a vehicle for your soul. Again, if you have an immortal soul, right? And all of a sudden your soul's created with your body, but then your soul's going to live for eternity in either hell or heaven. It's a bullshit story. It's a bullshit fucking story because there's a scam. And the scam is that you're going to do this religion and you're going to give everything to the religion and the power behind, you're going to give up your life in many cases because there's militaries involved with the religion. And so they came up with a story where this would be the only religion because they want to have a monopoly. And so the other religions, you're not going to heaven. We're the only ones who can get to heaven. We're the only ones that keep you out of hell. And so they're scaring you and tempting you because of, your own, you don't want to go to hell, right? Then you better do our thing. And so that's where the bullshit thing comes from. It's 100% bullshit. Right. When you're taking a story and you're manipulating the truth to have an outcome where you control other people. And that's what this religion has done. All the religions do it to some extent in different ways. But Christianity has a clear scam here. So then they have John 3:16 and these other parts of that, verse where Jesus is the only Son of God, even though Jesus calls the your Father, right? You say the Our Father prayer. Well, how is God my Father and Jesus is Father, but he's the only Son? That's silly. Again, bullshit thing. Right? So if he's not the only Son, then you start looking at other religions. And so they scare you into not believing, into believing that this is the only thing and you're going to go to hell if you even consider these other spiritual paths and religions. And so you don't even look at them, right? It's like Taco Bell says that you're going to die if you eat anything else but Taco Bell, so you don't go to McDonald's, right? So, it's a bullshit thing, right? So you don't even look into other things. And so to think that I have the bias when you haven't looked at other things because you're scared of going to hell and you believe in a heaven the way they present it to you. And so then they talk about heaven in a way that's not accurate. So your soul is going to go somewhere briefly before you reincarnate. And the farther you are along spiritually, the longer there is between births. The longer there is, Earth time, where there are souls, lower developed souls, they die and then they're almost immediately reincarnate. Almost like they die and go from one body to they start creating a baby in some, lower level consciousness human beings that are, uneducated, unsophisticated, these things. And almost living like these, animalistic, really poor people that are, that don't have the ability for abstract thought and living at a very low rate because they're trying to get as many lives in as possible so that they can evolve out of that lower level of consciousness and evolve to a higher level of, being. And you can see the distinction. So that's another way that there's proof. You can see the level of soul development in people. People have different levels of spiritual development and soul development in terms of the soul stays the same, but, incarnating multiple times, you start learning things. You start taking things with you. You start developing as a person. You have qualities and characteristics. You start at some point craving a connection to God. In the beginning, you're just living like a cause and effect, low level consciousness life. And you see people like this all the time. And so that's another proof of, quality of the soul, that there's some people that are, they've been here longer, like they have more experience or they come from a higher place when they're born. Like not all people have the same level or capacity for life and for spiritual life and for, they're just more evolved, right? You see there are people who are, are on a higher level. You see there's different levels of people. Like people aren't all the same. People have different levels of intelligence. They have different levels of ability. They have different levels of sophistication. Another level of proof is you meet people that just stick, they're part of your soul group, and you've had past lives with. You meet people all the time that are very familiar to you, My wife and I, we got together. It seemed like we were together forever. Like we just had, you know, there's past association. And there's lots of people that they're just random and they're almost like NPC. Like everyone has their own NPCs. People who aren't really a part of your life. They're just, like people you interact with. You go to the, you buy you go to some fast food place or you go to the grocery store and you interact with the cashier, or you interact with the doctor or the people that come and go in your life, and you have almost no conversations, no time, no past experience with. And then there are people that just resonate with you. You just feel, and some of them are negative. Some of them might play a negative role, but there's somebody that you've had some past experience with. There's people in your family even that you feel more comfortable with. You have more of a soul bond, right? Other people in your family, there's not as much, there's no closeness there. Your siblings, your parents, whatever it is. You might have one parent that you have a strong past life connection with, another parent that you barely, like they're nothing to you almost. Like they're just, yeah, that's my dad, or that's my mom, like you barely have any connection with, right? So there's people who just pop that you really resonate with. You really, there's just something there. And everybody experiences this, right? There's a connection with some people and not a connection. Like the majority of people you feel no connection to. And then there's layers of it. Like there's people that are, you're familiar with, but they're not really all that important to your, they're not lifelong friends or something, but, they stand out in short periods of time in your life. And this, in the Sahaj Marg system, you'd go to the ashram in Chennai, India. And like I had people I met that I got really close with, like for 2 weeks. There was a girl there that was a Russian girl. And we went through like a 20-year bad marriage in about 3 weeks. Right? It just, there were some kind of unresolved things. And there are people you'll meet and you'll definitely know that you had a past life with them. But they go back to their country, you go back to your country, you might stay in touch a little bit. You might, email or whatever. You might see each other in 10 years again, something like this. There's also places. I remember my mom going to Europe and having these experiences in Europe. She traveled to Ireland because she was Irish. And I think she went to Italy and some other places. And she felt, you go to places and you feel familiarity, right? There's a time Master Charji he had a past life as a Native American somewhere in Georgia where the ashram was. And he remembered a tree from a past life, right? And you can have past life memories with people. These things happen. Like there's just a ton of evidence about this. And so if your soul was just created, which is dumb as fuck, right? That, again, why would your soul and your body be created at the same time? It's stupid. But then your soul's going to live forever, your body's going to die? Like what? Like what? Like, well, of course there's a scam there. They can't tell you in a past life because then it's like, well, then if you die, then you might not go to heaven or hell. You might just come back here. And so then, like, how do I break that cycle? Well, I don't know. That's not in our book. I don't know. Well, I don't know. Don't ask stupid questions. Stupid. You're so stupid. And so it's a scam, right? So I'm the one with confirmation. I'm the one with bias, right? You've been indoctrinated into a religion that gives you a bullshit story about a soul being created the day that your body's created, which they have no real, they just say they don't expect you're going to test them on that, right? Like if I could pick that story apart if I had to talk to a priest or a reverend or something. But our book, it's on our book. Your book that's been translated and edited, and it isn't even written by your guy. It isn't even written by Jesus. It starts off with no chapters being written by Jesus. It's other people telling Jesus' story and teachings. And so it's already skewed. That game Telephone. It's limited to the disciples' ability to understand Jesus. That's why there's so much different shit in it. The Old Testament's a fucking train wreck. And again, they stole the idea of the soul from, not stole because it's for everybody, but they've changed the story of the soul to fit these narratives that are in these books, these various books. It's a bunch of collection of books that are put together that are, that have been manipulated and edited, and things are, changed, and there's all these things translated. And so the book is the book. It's not that great. It's an okay book in terms of, there's some good things in it, but there's a lot of bullshit in it too. So the book is not an authority. It's an authority to you because you've been told it's the Word of God. But it's not the Word of God. It's the book according to Mark or Paul or, John. It's a disciple saying in the New Testament it's disciple. In the Old Testament it's a fucked up book. It's not anything. God is totally misrepresented. And so once you're able to free yourself from your bondage, from your indoctrination, you can see that. And you start reading other books and other teachings, and you realize they're much more sophisticated, including the one about past lives and future lives. And so the problem is with people, they don't have, especially when you're wealthy, you live in a wealthy country like America, and you're enjoying your life. Once you hear there's a future life, you're like, oh, I'll just come back. Thinking that you're going to have a good life in the future, you're living a good life now, you're happy now, so so there's no sense of, oh, I want to get liberated. Why would I want to get liberated? I want to come back and enjoy and indulge on this planet more and more, like it's a video game. I want to experience the pleasures over and over again. So that's why there's pain and suffering. So you realize you got to get the fuck out of here. Like pain and suffering is a blessing, so you don't stay here forever. Because once you start indulging in your sensory stimulation and the pleasures of the flesh, right, then you're not going to want to leave. So that's another thing. So, why would you go to church when you can just enjoy the shit out of your life, knowing that, hey, I'm coming back anyway. I'll just enjoy this life and I'll enjoy my next life, right? So that's where pain and suffering come in. Let me get the fuck off this miserable planet, right? It motivates you as a spiritual person, because then you're like, you're not like reincarnation becomes something where you're like, oh, I get a do-over? Good. I'll fuck around and do a do-over. So that's another level where Christianity can't have you, they have to scare the shit out of you with this idea of hell. Otherwise you wouldn't come to church anymore, right? Well, I don't want to go to hell, so I'll go to church. You want to go to church today? No, but I don't want to go to hell either. So, and so this is the whole thing, right? It's a scam. And so heaven, there's, Babaji said that the most you could get out of the Christian faith is salvation. He called it salvation, which is a 17-year period between this life and your next life, where you'd have time. If you have time to process your past life and then carefully plan and choose your next life on a soul level, you're together with other souls, and you have a spiritual support team, and there's consciousness in your life, and you're working for God, and there's a whole plan. You're coming down. Whereas you die. Some people die and they immediately they're incarnating anywhere. They're not. There's no rhyme or reason. They're just not. They're just trying to churn out as many lives as possible, as quickly as possible, because they want to get more and more experience on Earth, so they can have, then they can elevate to another level of human life, human consciousness. So their soul is just, checking the box, and there's no planning. But as you move forward, and you have spiritual consciousness, you connect to God, and then there's levels of knowledge and things that are there, and it's more of a consciousness than you're on a different level of consciousness, and you can see it. So there's all this evidence for past lives, zero evidence for hell and heaven as a one-off, as a either or, because when you die, you're going to an etheric place, and depending on your proximity to God, where you are in your spiritual yatra, your spiritual journey, it's a better place, because of, your own accomplishments, your journey, you're being closer to God. But until you reach liberation, you're still coming back here. And then once you reach liberation, then you can go into the etheric world, but then you're working. There's no fucking 70 virgins and a mule, this like this stuff that they tell these terrorists, if you die, you're going to heaven, you're going to have 70 virgins. Like, there's all these, soul women waiting for you without a body for you to, it's silly fucking stupid shit like that, right? Like, there's no you're going to heaven and everything's great, and it's all pleasurable. It's all work. You're working for God. It's just automatic. Like, you just don't sit around. You're not going to vacation. You're not going to Hawaii when you die, right? It's silly. You're going to go to work. Your soul's going to work on, doing God's work without any obstructions of your ego, without any obstructions of your personality, And you can work on a soul level where you're using you've developed these etheric qualities, your ethereal body, and you work on an energetic level. And so, again, like the idea of past lives has always been there, because once you realize you have a soul, then your soul was somewhere before, and your soul is going to go somewhere else in the future. And if you look at life, the way schools are set up, right? You get a certain level of knowledge. You learn how to read in the first grade, and you learn how to, read and write in the first grade. And then in the second grade, you learn to do it better. And then you learn how to do math, and and each year you graduate to something else. And when you do, your job, you get a promotion, and you do a better job, and you do a higher job. Like everything's like that. Like you graduate to something better. You have a shitty first marriage, you do better on your second marriage, right? Something like this, right? Everything's like that, right? You screw up your first kid, so you get better on your second kid, right? As a parent, like everything's about learning and developing, and these things. And you have multiple lives. Like in your own life right now, you can think of probably 7 or 8 distinct periods. You're a baby, which you can't remember. Then you're a toddler, which you have barely any memory of. Then you're a kid, you have some memories of that. And then you're an adolescent. So you've had 4 lives. You've had 4, separate, experiences. Like you're a different person. You're different. You go through these stages of development. And then you're a full-fledged adult. So you've had like 6 or 7 different, states of consciousness you've been in. And your mind's changing, your brain's changing. And then you have these various relationships. You have your college life, and that lasts, that's a period. And then you graduate to something else. You have a family, and then that's a different period. And then you're working, and then you retire, and that's a different period. And your body's going through things and your consciousness is changing. And you have these distinct periods of your life where you look back on who you were when you were a kid, or where you were as a, this is how life works, like just video games, right? You have a life, and you get through a certain level of the video game. And so that's everywhere in existence. But you only have one life, one chance. It's silly. Of course you have multiple lives. And there's people who are more evolved than other people. What do you think those more evolved people, they either have to come from a higher level of consciousness, or they have to have multiple lives. And usually it's both things. And so they have to, you have to graduate from this experience on planet Earth, and it takes multiple lives for most people to do that. Where you live lives on Earth until you get it, till you pass the test. And so that's why there's past lives and future lives. It makes total fucking sense, right? And this bullshit idea, the Christian religion, it has you by the fucking balls, because it says you're either going to hell or heaven, and we're the only ones who can get you to heaven. And so, yeah, it's a scam. It's a fucking scam. And Jesus never said that. And so let's just review the proof, right? It starts off with a bullshit idea where if you had a past life, it makes sense. You have memories of that past life. You have memories of people. You have experiences that are of familiarity with places, people, and things. You pick up a violin, and some people are like fucking virtuosos, and other people can't play a note. Some people have abilities. They're like, wow, I'm really good at this. Yeah, because you did in a past life, asshole. You have a head start. Like everyone, there's a bunch of kids in school in violin class, and one of them's like fucking a virtuoso and so much better than the rest of them. And immediately it gravitates to it, right? Because you have that already as a samskara from some past existence. And so there's all these things that are proof, people, these things. So it starts off with a bullshit idea from Christianity that your soul got created when your body got created. And most people don't even fucking know it, right? Don't even fucking know that that's the story. Because, it's silly. It's a fucking silly story. Your soul's eternal and your body is temporary. And so there's all this proof that's there. That there's, in every aspect of life, there's a graduation. You get rewarded for conquering something, for mastering something. You have obstacles you have to overcome. You have, school, you have levels of knowledge you have to obtain, and then you pass on to something else, right? You take you study to be a doctor, and you go through these various levels of education, and then eventually you get this certificate and a license. You graduate, right? There's a sense of graduation. Yes, you've lived a good life. You've graduated. The other stupid idea is Jesus can die for your sins. How the fuck is that possible? How can one guy have died for your sins 2,000 years ago? It's a bullshit story that you've been told. And if you believe it, it's because you've been indoctrinated. And, again, there's lies in everything in these religions, but that's a monster lie. It's a good deal. Oh, he died for my sins? Sure, great. I'll sin I'll sin a lot, and then on my deathbed I'll say, I'll loophole it, and I'll go, Jesus, please forgive me. I accept you as my Lord and Savior. Oh, good, you're getting to heaven. It's a bullshit idea. So, again, like your bias is you were raised in something that you don't want to confront the bullshit ideas in it. And maybe you can't. Maybe this is the best you can do. That's fine. But, like, you don't have to come here and tell me that I'm full of shit, right? Just because you haven't confronted the lies and indoctrination that you've been faced with. All right, let's move on to the next comment here. Okay, so I just ate breakfast, so I wanted to say more about this. This is important stuff. Let me reread the comment. I enjoy listening to you, Paul, but to declare no heaven, but declare reincarnation, they both take faith, sir. Accept your bias against the faith for heaven. Why not see both and believe in the same, since there's no proof? Otherwise, really enjoy your psychological breakdown and control of the language. Take care. So let me just say this. The idea of an abstract world, an etheric world, is true. Like you go somewhere else. You're living, your soul exists in two places. It exists in your body and it exists in an etheric world at the same time. It's hard to connect with the etheric world because you're so wrapped up in your bodily consciousness. And so that's why you meditate on a soul level and connect with the soul so you can deepen your understanding and your perspective of the soul experience it's having in a different place, right? So that's the need for the Sahaj Marg meditation or some sort of meditation like that. It's not, meditation isn't the Sahaj Marg meditation that I do. Isn't like a copyright, right? Like anybody who meditates correctly connects with the soul, right? So the Sahaj Marg system enhances this experience through transmission and cleaning, but it's a system that is, can't be owned like a religion. It's something that is a God-given gift, and we are lucky enough to experience it, right? And the organization itself, so this is when this guy Daji corrupted it for his own means. He's taking something sacred and pure. When Jesus came down, he had a gift to give, and he gave it to his people, his disciples, and they were able to experience it and understand it on their level. And then the gift was corrupted and lost by these, money-grabbing pieces of shit that always come in and usurp a religion for their own personal, physical, material gain. So the issue isn't about reincarnation versus heaven. This is about control, right? In the movie The Heretic, religion's about control. They have control over you because they're the gatekeepers to heaven. You want to get to heaven, you only get through heaven through the Son. You only get to the Father through the Son, and we control the Son. And the religion doesn't control Jesus. And Jesus is unhappy with his religion because why would he be happy with these various religions? Maybe individual people who are doing good Christian things and who get his original message that's been corrupted by these powerful, corrupt organizations, right? The heaven and hell story is a weapon of control. Reincarnation, if I said, well, my thing is the only thing that allows you to get liberation, which isn't the case. The Sahaj Marg does not teach that liberation has to come through the Sahaj Marg system. You can get liberated through self-effort or through doing something else that would give you liberation, right? It isn't, and in Sahaj Marg, see, the problem with Christianity and this story is, let me go back to what this person said. Let me find the comment again, where the person says this, enjoy listening to you, Paul, but to declare no heaven, but declare reincarnation, they both take faith. Well, you're talking about something other than faith. You're talking about delusion. Because if you look at the various Christians, and just from their outward appearance, your people you go to church with, and then you have saints and you have different people, they all can't be going to heaven because they have much different, if you're going to grade their Christianity on a scale of 1 to 10, right? Like how good they are as Christians. And there's some Christians that are like as a 9 or 10 in terms of their outward appearance and you don't know what's going inside of people, but they have different internal experiences. Like a person who reads the Bible, talks about Jesus, and does generous works, and is always doing things like good Christian things, right? They're at like a 9 or a 10, right? It's 10 is a hard thing to achieve, but like they're at a 9, 9.5, whatever, 9.9, and they're at the highest level. And then you have some people who are nine solid nines, people who are eights, people are sevens, people are one, and they're still accepting Jesus Christ as their Lord and Savior, but they're not really into it. They're sinning regularly, and they go to church and they believe in God, and they believe in Jesus. They pray occasionally when they need to, and so why would they all get the same thing, right? Where in life do you get where everybody gets the same thing, right? Where everybody gets a passing grade, even though, you get different scores, right? You get different levels. And based in, like, there's lots of people who graduate high school, but some are going to elite universities, and some are going to work in the frickin' diner, right? So, like there's, it doesn't, just because you graduate high school doesn't mean everyone gets the same thing. Like, yeah, you graduate high school, but, how well did you do? Well, I barely got through. Whereas some people excel and they're geniuses and they're going to go on to do brilliant things. So, that's the problem with Christianity, that it's either or. You're either going to hell or heaven. And the organizations themselves profit off of your donations, profit off of your so-called faith, profit off of you believing they have control of your eternal soul. That through them, through the religion, through all these things, you're going to get one thing or the other, right? And so that's a bullshit story. It's bullshit at every level. If Trump was trying to sell you that, or some fucking con man or somebody, it would sound like a bullshit story. It's just that you were born into it, your family believes in it, and then you're scared about the outcome. And what if this isn't true, right? And so this person's saying that both take faith in reincarnation. Well, reincarnation, you can actually experience evidence, because the idea of a soul is what takes faith. But you can experience your soul if you put some effort into it, and you have the capacity for abstract thought, and you can, you have some spiritual capital, right? You have some, but you can experience these things. Like I said, familiarity with people, places, and things, and past life memories, and, so many skills that you have, and the things that are there. Like, this came from something. Why do I have this ability? Why am I able to do this? Well, you did it before. So you have some experience, where other people are just first timers, and first timers have a hard time with past lives because it's their first time. They don't have any, whatever. But either there's a soul or there isn't a soul. And if there is a soul, then there is a process, right? If there's a purpose to your existence here, well, what is the purpose? You're supposed to learn some things. You're supposed to develop. Why did my soul choose to be born in a body when I could live in an etheric world? If I was in an etheric world before, if I existed in an etheric world as a soul, then why am I being born? Well, there's a reason for your birth. So you figure out what the reason is. And then there's a process of, what's called liberation, freedom from repetitive births. And in the Sahaj Marg system, you have to work for that. And you can reach a certain level. Like, everything has, a graduation, where you've mastered some level and you're ready to move on to the next thing. Like, that happens in your life. It happens in your past lives and your future lives. And so you're moving on to the next level. It's all about that. Like, that's everything in existence like that, right? You've mastered this level. You were a dog in a past life. Now you can become a human. You had multiple lives as a dog. You interacted with people. You started to become more human. Pets can also often become almost human-esque. Their consciousness raises from being around higher beings. And that's one of the important things, to be around higher people, to be around higher souls. This is the idea of, spiritual masters and divine beings that descend down to earth to pull you up to a higher level. And so that's the need for these things, right? But you have to do the work. And there's people in Sahaj Marg who went far past the point of liberation, and they fell spiritually. And they lost it because they stopped working. And so what I do, there's emphasis on you working. It's not that you just get some gift because you're associated with some person and that you've accepted this person as God. That's a bullshit thing, right? You have to do the work. Like, he can't die for your sins. He can't elevate you to a higher level unless you cooperate. And you have to work for it. And even if you get that level, you have to maintain it and still be moving forward, else you go backwards. And there's people who, were born in a liberated state and they somehow got caught up here. Souls that were already in a higher level of consciousness and they didn't have to reincarnate, but they lost their way on planet Earth. They got sucked into the drama, the bullshit stuff, the pleasure and all the rest of it. And then they got lost and they're stuck here and they didn't have to be, right? And there's souls that reach the highest level and they're liberated and they don't have to come back, but they fall. And then there's other souls that come back voluntarily because they're doing God's work. And so this is, it makes much more sense. Like my reincarnation, it's not my thing. The reincarnation theory is way better than the heaven and hell theory in every possible way. You can't compare the two things. Isn't one's based, they're both based in faith. One's a bullshit story. And, this is what people don't like about what I say here is that I'm not here to keep your delusion going. That's not why this channel exists. I'm not here to tell you things so that it's like pampering you like you're some person with Alzheimer's. I have to humor you. Oh, I have to take, I can just speak my truth here. Maybe in an interaction, I would have to humor you, which I don't want to do. That's why I don't have these social interactions. This is me being able to just say what I do believe to be the truth on every level. And if it bothers you because it disagrees with some of your bullshit delusional thinking or whatever, right? Then, that's not my problem. Like you can go somewhere else where they'll tell you, yeah, everything's going to be fine. You're going to heaven. Like you're not. It's not, you have to achieve something. You might get you're going to get something. Like I'm not going to discourage somebody who only can do Christianity. If Christianity is the highest level you can reach, then by all means do it with gusto. Like, but don't come here. Like it's just going to bother your faith, right? Like if that's all you can do, it's going to bother you. It's going to, it's going to put doubt into your, I'm going to say things that you're going to be like, oh, that sounds fucking right. And it's going to make you feel unsettled. But if you can do something higher, then you need to do something higher. Like people need to reach the highest level of their spiritual potential. And some people are ready for abstract connection to God. There's saints, there's Christian saints who realize that, they ascend from the bullshit of the Christian religion and they connect with Jesus and God directly. And they get persecuted and killed because they're a danger to the hierarchy. I mean, how many saints were killed and tortured by the religious establishment? Jesus himself and then the rest of them. Even if they weren't tortured and killed physically, they're demonized and they're, ostracized and these things. Because people who tell the truth in a system that's about control are a danger to that system. And that's what I talk about here across the board. Everything that, that indoctrinates people to believe in shit that's not real. And that's, that's pretty much everything on planet Earth in every system. All right, let's get to the other two comments here. They're brief. One's a bot comment I want to comment. This bot that's been summarizing my videos. This is a video. Trump makes girl faint. David Hogg admits script and actor. Glenn Walls returns. This video covers various topics, including Trump's immigration policies, David Hogg's comments, Gwen Walsh's behavior, Jeff Bezos' falling, and thoughtful meditation practice. It criticizes political figures and discusses spiritual concepts from the Sahaj Marg system. I'm digging this AI bot thing that comments and does the review. It's very helpful to me because I don't know what the fuck I say in the videos, right? And this person writes, my question is, if the assassination attempt was faked, who is the alleged shooter? And did the guy get wrongly accused? Also, did somebody in the crowd really die? It's quite possible that the shooting accurately happened. However, it was planned as part of an agenda. If that theory is true, Trump is a diehard. In what way is up for debate? In what way is up for debate? I'm not sure what that last part meant. When this thing first happened and I was calling it fake, people started asking me about the people who were allegedly shot, right? The people who were, killed in the official story. And they asked me, do you think they were actors or what? And I said, I'm not falling for that fucking trap, right? Like, that's not what this is about. The details of the event, this is, that's what happened with Alex Jones and that stuff with, Sandy Hook and all these things. Like, what they're doing here is mining for victim consciousness. Any of these events, right? So the more they control over this thing, I did a video that got banned, and I was talking about these other events. And so, very important point. But what they're looking here is for victim consciousness. And so Trump's the victim. And so there's this, I often read this thing that has to do with this was a comment that really described my ex, but so many other people. And so it says this: the victim stance is a powerful one. The victim is always morally right, neither responsible nor accountable, and forever entitled to sympathy. So the big event in 2001 made Americans victims. And what happened from that one victimized event? Like, you think about, there was victim consciousness after 2001. They attacked us. They took down those towers, those motherfuckers, right? And so what happened after that? Well, there was the initial war in Afghanistan, right? So there was some stuff that happened in Afghanistan because the guy who perpetrated this, bin Laden, was allegedly there. But they didn't get the guy. But they went into Afghanistan anyway. And what came out of that Afghanistan war? Poppies. So the Taliban weren't growing poppies, which produce opium. They were scumbags, the Taliban, but they were against drug production. And it's a great place to grow poppies. So America took over Afghanistan. And what happened after that? There was the immediate opioid crisis that happened. The opioid crisis happened. They invaded Afghanistan in 2003, 2002 this time, whatever it was. And then poppy production was there, and then the opioid crisis began. All of a sudden, there was a lot of opium that was available, and it was available in Afghanistan. And so, that happened, right? And what's the other thing that happened? They invaded Iraq. Okay, so there was bullshit things. Saddam Hussein had nothing to do with 9/11, nothing. And had no weapons of mass destruction. They came up with a bullshit story. Again, all this victim consciousness. They had victim, we've been attacked. We get to go out there and deal with our attackers, but they weren't dealing with anybody, right? Years later, there was this bullshit story that Obama went in and killed bin Laden, and they threw his body into the ocean, and all the guys who were on SEAL Team 6 end up dying. These are all the things that happened from this one victim event, right? And so what were the other wars? Well, America got rid of Gaddafi. Gaddafi gave up all his weapons of mass destruction. Gaddafi was about to achieve the UN plan of Millennium Development Goals. He was well on his way. His people loved him. He took Africa from the poorest country in Africa to the richest country in Africa, and he was doing all kinds of good things. But he wanted to start selling oil in a gold dinar, which would take down the petrodollar, so they got rid of him. More victim consciousness from 9/11. That had nothing to do with Gaddafi. And then they were trying to do the same bullshit in Syria and Iran. They had a plan to go into all these countries that had nothing to do with it, right? Just from one event where Americans were victims and we were outraged and we get to get some fucking payback, right? And so whenever there's an event, there's victim consciousness and there's victims. And the victims, there's outrage. And to control that victim consciousness, because every criminal is a victim, every abuser is a victim. Poor me, they come from this victim stance. I've talked about this extensively, the assault cycle. That every crime, every misdeed, every thinking area comes from, I feel sorry for myself. I've been victimized. I get to hurt somebody else. I've been hurt. I get to hurt other people. I've been cheated. I get to cheat other people. This is all victim consciousness shit. And Trump was using that as a way, this whole thing. They stole the election from me. They tried to lock me up and they tried to kill me. And then all the people they rally around him. It's very similar to the biblical story in these things, with this victim consciousness. All Christians are being victimized in these things. And, Jesus was put up on a cross. It's a victim consciousness that they have, that this, man was, this person was mistreated, and then there's supposed to be sympathy in these things, right? They're using victim consciousness. So the overall story, if you get into the details, you sound like an asshole, right? Some poor innocent guy gets shot, and you're denying his, whatever, some kids or whatever it is. And so, you don't have any real proof of the thing, and you can't, And so then you end up looking like an asshole. The details of the event are, whatever they are. They're not important. You just look at, it's fake, and they're using it Trump used the event immediately with a big ass fucking tampon, maxi pad on his ear when he went into the, the whole thing that happened with the convention. And so, like, and then he had all these WWE people fight, fight, fight. I was victimized, but now I'm going to fight back. And then it's like, looks like he's getting up from being knocked down and this stuff, right? And so that's what this thing is, clearly about. This guy gets shot. He gets up and he pumps his fist, fight, fight, fight. What a fighter. What a tough guy. Right? What a guy. It's a bullshit thing. It's totally performative. He's a piece of shit. And he's scamming his people. His people are the one who gravitate to this, right? So he's the people that worship him, that look up to him, that thinks he's one of them. He's using this to get them, right? It's a scam. It's very similar to what I was saying about the heaven and hell story. These are things where they're manipulating. There's a goal. What is he trying to get out of you? Your vote and your allegiance and your support and your money, to campaign donations, right? Same thing with religions. What are they getting out of you? Your support, your allegiance, your money, your soul, right? Like, so they're lying to you to get, you gotta, who's benefiting from your belief? Like, if your belief is in reincarnation, nobody benefits from that. Like, I don't give a shit if you believe in reincarnation or not. Who gives a shit? I don't give a shit if you believe that Trump's assassination attempt was fake, but why the fuck are you here otherwise, right? Like, you're certainly not, you aren't seeking truth. You're seeking somebody to tell you what you already believe is true. You're not looking to change and develop your consciousness and wake up and see through the lies and the bullshit. You want the deception. So go to a place where they're gonna continuously indoctrinate you with the deception because you don't want to hear anything else, right? Like, the truth is fucking painful, and the truth is always you have to work harder and you have to change and you have to be better and you have to take responsibility for your life, right? You can't just be sitting there, oh, let's get rid of the deep state and everything will be good. Oh, let's just accept Jesus and I'll go to heaven. These are easy ways out. They're just giving you a fucking, a pass on your taking responsibility for your life and living a life where you're supposed to do shit that's for, the betterment of yourself and other people. And you're supposed to figure it out and continuously evolve. And that just doesn't happen because people, I can just blame those guys are worse than me over there. Let's change them. Well, what about you changing? No, let's change them. I'd rather have them change. And so, you have to change. Like, that's, and that's not a message that sells. Telling other people they have to change isn't something that they want to hear, and you can't monetize that, right? You can't monetize somebody else doing something they don't want to do, right? Like, that you have to figure it out. Like, I don't have the answers. Like, nobody has your answers for you. You have to figure out what you're supposed to do. I mean, you can get help and you can get guidance and you can, experience these things by being around higher developed souls and consciousness and watching them how they did things and learning from them. But ultimately, you have to learn from them. You have to, develop these skills and learn from there's a difference between worshiping someone like Jesus or becoming somebody like the masters in the Sahaj Marg system, where they represent something that you can achieve. Like, Jesus is the only son of God, so you're never going to achieve that, right? Trump is some great man that you never achieve that. But what good is it if one person is great? Like, how's that going to help anything, right? What good is it if there's only one son of God? Like, we're all children of God, right? And so, like, these things are all the same. The scam is the same. And it's just one thing. This is probably one of the most important things I've said in any of these videos. Like, it's just one thing. It's a one-part scam. And it's that you don't want to face the truth about yourself and your life. You don't want to take responsibility for your life. So you hear these scams that tell you don't have to, right? So that's what all this is about. That people don't want to deal with their own bullshit and have to, figure it out and have to, work towards something. They just want to be told, you're doing great, everything's okay. We just have to change this other thing. We got to get rid of the deep state. We got to get rid of the devil. If we do that, we got to get everyone else to do this religion. And when everyone else is doing it, we'll all be good people. Well, there's already shitty people in your religion. There's already pedophile priests and reverends and, scammers and conmen and, dudes like Jim Baker and these, mega churches and they're all doing the thing and when they suck. That hasn't cured shit, right? Because none of these people are willing to take personal responsibility for their spiritual evolution, figure out why they're here, and have a real relationship with their soul and God, which is part of the thing because people are scared of God, right? Master Charge is saying, Christians don't want to face God. They don't want to go in front of God, right? And so they have a son. Like they go to the son. Hey, can you talk to your dad for me? It's like you go to your boss's son. You don't want to go to your boss. Your boss scares you. So you'll go to your boss's son. Hey, can you tell your dad this? Can you find a way to say this where he doesn't get pissed off at me and fire me or whatever? And so, when you go to heaven, who do you see? Peter. St. Peter standing at the gates of heaven. Why not God? God's too busy, right? God can't do that job, right? Why would he have somebody else doing it, right? It's a silly idea. So there's just bullshit things that they tell you, right? And so you're avoiding the divinity within you. You're avoiding facing God. You don't want to go before God because God's going to tell you things you don't want to hear, right? Like you don't want to go in front of somebody who's connected to God because they're going to tell you things you don't want to hear. And so you find lower developed people who will pat you on the back and tell you you're doing everything great and that you don't need to change. And that's what everybody's seeking. And then when you run into somebody that does tell you the truth, you get butthurt because you're not willing to face up to your own things that you have to change. People in the truth community say, I'm awake. No, I'm awake, right? I'm awake. Look at those sheeple over there, but I'm awake. Well, are you awake? Well, up until a point where you hear something that is something you don't want to hear, you can't hear. Something about yourself that you have to do something different. You have to work harder. You have to face things you don't want to face. You have to deal with things you don't want to deal with. You have to give up things that are bad for you, that you love, or you're addicted to. And so all these things. And so like as soon as, that's why they kill these motherfuckers, right? Why do you think they killed not just Jesus, but every one of his disciples? And then, why did they stop killing him? Why aren't they killing the Pope? Because the Pope is compromised. Why aren't they killing all these mega church guys? Because they're compromised, right? They killed the people that were telling the truth. I mean, it's a lower level of truth. It isn't even that sophisticated a teaching. The Bible is, spirituality 101, the good parts, the Jesus parts, of his higher developed teachings that they still left in there. The kingdom of heaven's within. It's the starting point. It's kindergarten. And even with that, they killed people. They killed people for just the kindergarten level teachings and spirituality because they can't control it. It's something that represents a loss of control. I mean, the Pharisees, the Jewish Pharisees, the hierarchy of the church, and the Roman government both saw Jesus as a threat for spirituality 101, for kindergarten level teaching. They thought he was a threat, killed him, and killed every one of his disciples. So think about that, right? And they stopped killing him once it was corrupted, once they took over the teachings. And it's there for everyone who wants to see it, but people just don't want to see it. Only spirituality will save this world. It's Paramano definitely reporting for the Apocalaughs and the Ascension. Everyone have a blessed day and be grateful.